Hi everybody and welcome back to Borderlines today. Now today what I thought I'd talk about is a story that I found in the Guardian. So it was a few days old, okay, but it's relevant, okay. And I don't generally read the Guardian newspaper or anything. Okay. But the reason I find it relevant is the headline is social housing list will take 119 years to clear at current building rates. Okay. And the reason I find it relevant is this. Now, the other day, when Andy Burnham was making his big speech, he was basically saying everything in the country, what's wrong in the country, is Margaret Thatcher's fault. Now, to me, that's just a cop-out excuse because of your incompetence, because you was in the Tony Blair government, okay, which means you failed to resolve them problems and you was in government for what, 12 to 14 years? That means the whole of the Conservative government failed for 14, and they were in government for 14 years. And the Labour Party that you're part of now and you're now leading has failed for the last 2 years. And you want to blame a woman that's passed away, but everything's her fault, even though she hasn't been in government for over 30 years. Now, to me, it is a cop-out excuse. But this is the main thing that it actually says in the story, and this is why it's quite interesting. It says it would take more than a century to clear the social housing waiting list in England, not Scotland and Wales or Northern Ireland, just England, at the government's current speed of delivering new social homes. Research by Shelter has shown the housing charity found that more than 1.3 million households are on a waiting list for a social home, but only 12,198 were built by councils, housing associations, or private developers, according to developers across England last year. This equates to an average of 110 households waiting for every new social home delivered, and it would take 119 years to clear the waiting list if building continued at the same rate. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it because that's basically the nuts of it. Now, are they wrong? I would suggest they're probably not. I would, as much as Shower has seen it as left leaning, I'd actually agree with it. I wouldn't find it difficult. And this is the reason why. Now, me and my wife and my family, we live in such a house. We live in a housing association. Okay, I'm not rich. I ain't got loads of money or anything like that. I wish I did. Solve a lot of problems. Also cause a lot of problems. Okay. And when my youngest daughter was born, now she was born with Down syndrome and she had a serious heart condition. Okay, she still has a heart condition. Okay. And we got told we were going to have to move. Okay, because we had to have oxygen tanks and everything like that in the house. And we got told we would have to move. So we spoke to the local council, because that's what the Housing Association told us. We couldn't stay in our 3-bed, we had to stay in a 4. We had to move into a 4-bed. So we spoke to the local council. They came out, evaluated everything. They said, "Yep, right, you need to move." Okay, and you think, "Oh, great, going to get a move." Maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years maximum. No, they told us 20 years. We would have to wait 20 years to get a move. Now, lucky for me, I knew a local councillor, spoke to the local councillor. She got in touch with the Housing Association. They got us a move inside, about 3 years? I think it was about 3 years they got us a move in. So, I managed to get a few strings pulled. We're lucky enough for us, we managed to get a move to a much nicer area as well. We moved into Leon Solent, which is a very affluent area. and the rent's a lot more expensive. So that's the downside. Now, the problem is not everybody's that lucky. Okay, and the fundamental problem is councils don't buy. And the mistake was made under Margaret Thatcher. Because as far as I'm aware, Margaret Thatcher, at the end of the day, her idea was right. Because her idea was that everybody should have the right to be able to buy a house, to be able to have their own home. You know, it's the one thing that everybody wants to have is their own home. Okay, so she had the idea of having it. So that if you'd lived in your council house for a certain length of time, you should be entitled to be able to buy it and get it at a reduced rate, which is all well and good, okay, in theory. But she also brought out the rule that the councils couldn't reinvest that money into buying or building new stock, which was where her mistake was. What she should have done was say to them, right, let's say, for instance, for this calendar year, you've sold £10 million worth of properties. Now what you've got to do, let's say, for instance, half of that. Half of that goes into your budget to do things that you need to do, you know, whether that's, you know, Meals on Wheels, roads, whatever you need it for. So 5 million goes into that. The other 5 million you've got to use to reinvest into building new stock. Okay, building new houses, new flats, all of that type of stuff. But councils up in the country were unable to do that because they weren't allowed to do that. And that's where the biggest mistake by Margaret Thatcher was. And unfortunately, under no other Prime Minister since, John Major, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, one I can't remember their names, okay, Keir Starmer, they've all made promises to build more stock, you know, resolve the planning permission rules. But none of them have really delivered on it. None of them have. You know, and the fundamental thing is, you know, we know that we need these houses. You know, so they need to do something about it. What they need to do, I don't honestly know. You know, there's a, you know, I've said in the past, you know, go and build some more tower blocks. That'll get you some housing straight away. But then a lot of people will say to me, and when I've spoken about doing that type of thing, okay, say, yeah, but tower blocks back in the day, they were bloody awful. And they were horrible. But it creates a lot of housing. Because not everybody's going to need a 3-bedroom house. Some people only need like a 1 or 2 bedroom flat at the end of the day. And if you've got that small bit of plot of land there and you can go up and build lots of houses, that's one way of resolving a problem. And then getting 3 and 4 bedroom houses, not getting 2 bedroom houses, getting 3 and 4 bedroom houses built on estates, getting property developers and saying to them, you build the houses. Don't wait until the prices go up. We need them now. Or we take the land off you and we go and give it to somebody else. Because that's one of the problems we have in this country. But property developers will sit on land and they won't build on it until they know that the house prices are going up so they can earn more money. And they'll probably deny it, but it's bloody well true. Okay, and then you've got to look at councils and say, councils, you need to start building houses. You know, where I live, I can't actually think of a development council even doing. Can't think of a single one. You know, I may be wrong, but I don't know of any developments the council are actually doing. I don't even know of any developments any housing associations are doing for the whole area. And that's a fundamental problem, you know, with the growing population we have and all the migration that we've got coming into this country. All this needs to be resolved, you know, because the population is getting bigger. Country is, well, government aren't really doing enough when it comes to illegal migration. Legal migration is another argument, you know. So, as a country, you know, this is a big talking point, and the government need to do something about this, and they need to do something about it extremely quickly, because when you look at what the Guardian say, 119 years, in my book, that's not acceptable, and they need to start building housing, and that's not just houses, that's blocks of flats as well. And like I said, I would suggest large blocks of flats, as in not going down the route of like the typical American skyscraper, but you know, your tower blocks like you always used to have that were probably built 1950s, 1960s, but making them nicer, you know, where people are going to want to move into them. Okay, so that's my personal view. Okay, so what I want people to tell me is, what do you think the country actually needs to do? But if the housing issue is that bad, what should the government do to resolve it? So let us know in the comments down below. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you all again a bit later.